So we know that before we get started, do you mind if I ask you just a few questions, Mark, to get the group warmed up?
I guess.
So that they know who you
Good
are.
morning.
So the first question I want to ask you, Mark, is that Detroit is known for cars, music, sports, and good-looking people. Now, you and I got the good-looking people thing down, so let me ask you a couple questions about the other thing. What's your first car?
My first car was a 1967 Camaro that my dad and myself went down to where he was born in Illinois and found it was $1,300 and needed a lot of work. So we trailered it back up here to Detroit and redid it, and it was great. It was just terrific. It was not a fast car. It was a 327, 250 horse, two-barrel automatic, but it was a pretty car.
Okay. You know I don't know what he just said. All right. Okay. All right, second thing, if you had a theme song, what would it be?
Man. I tell you, I really like Motown music, being raised here, so, and I like the OJs a lot. So maybe Love Train, perhaps.
Love Train. Should I ask him to sing it?
Or a much darker song, perhaps, which is God's Gonna Cut You Down by Johnny Cash.
All right.
Yeah,
all right.
So that's a good one. I've heard that in MLB. I'm a big baseball fan, so I've heard that.
All right. Sports, Lion, Pistons, or Tigers?
Well, I gotta tell you, I'm a big Tiger fan. So I buy season tickets. I have since my kids were 3 and 4 years old. We've been to every opening day. So Tiger Stadium to Comerica Park. So I really enjoy that. Plus, we got 2 Chevrolet products at the fountain in there. So it's a good thing.
Well, you know he wasn't going to say the Lions. You know which family owns that.
I want to love the Lions. I want to. I really do, no matter what.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mark. Well, let's just jump into some questions about education so we could set the tone for everyone. You spearheaded a $27.1 million grant to United Way to work on failing high schools in our region. I mean, that was an unheard of corporate commitment by GM. Why did you do that, and what do you feel like you've learned from that?
That's a great question, Tanya. We coming out of bankruptcy, when we brought the company public, Mike Brennan said, hey, I want to show you what the United Way is doing, which was right across the street from the Ren Center there. So we went in and looked at the call center that they had set up, which was incredibly impressive for people. And then he said, I want to take you over to Cody High School, and I want to show you that high school and a little experiment that that we're running and would like to expand. And so we went over there, and the lack of population and the decline of students had led to a consolidation by a lot of emergency managers. And so, there was basically a 70-to-1 ratio in a classroom there. And kids were sitting on the floor. They didn't have any books or pencils. And I met a young woman named Destiny. And she told me her story, and from not being able to have something to eat, to not being able to get there, to all the way to the light in her eyes. I don't know how I can walk away from it. And that really was the catalyst for it, because we can't, as part of this city and growing up in this area, if our generation is the generation that lets another generation of kids go, I don't think I can take that.
Right. I think that one of the things I love about you, Mark, is that you like to dig in on the toughest issues. I think there are 2 kinds of leaders. I think it's the leaders that say, what's the easy wins? What's the low-hanging fruit? Let's just show some progress. And then there are the leaders that say, give me the biggest, hairiest, ugliest problem you got, and I'm your guy for it. And I think that you're one of those people.
Thank you.
I thought one of the things I thought was really interesting as you were describing some of the conditions that children are facing in Detroit was that as a part of GM's commitment to the community, you were in the Osborne neighborhood where you were helping clean up the neighborhood so that kids could have safe routes. And I heard you stumbled into a place that you start cleaning up. Would you talk a little bit about that? And then While you're talking about it, I just want to preface and say GM's risk management is going to have some challenges after you answer this question.
Well, Heidi Magyar, who has been, and Maria Raynal, who have helped me do this other part of the school piece of it, and Vivian Picard, we took it to a summer program, a student corps. So, what are these kids in these schools that we're trying to turn around and get the graduations up? What are we doing in the summer with these kids? And so we started something called the Student Corps. And so we take a GM retiree, we take a U of D student, and we pair them with 10 of these kids. And they go in, and we pay them. So they get GM on their resume. They get a little money. And I can tell you 99% of these kids have not made money. And it's interesting to see how they use that money. One kid started a computer repair service, is now on full scholarship out of Hamtramck into Ross Business School at the U of M. But those are the type of things we do. And Heidi has leveraged that with Life Remodeled. So last year we did Cody, this year we did Osborne. And so I went down and worked an afternoon in the Osborne area there, which was a magnitude of difficulty higher than what was going on at Cody. And there was blocks and blocks. So we brought 4,000 people down from the tech center in Warren to work a week in Life Remodeled to clean up all this area. Lots of partners to do that. And so I went in on an afternoon to a house, and we took the lock off the garage and went in. And certainly what was happening in there was a meth lab. And so we cleaned out the meth lab. And in the meth lab were toys from children. And it was not good, but right next to that, then in the house next to us were 3 kids, 3 kids living next to this. So it's an eye-opening experience. It is a firm reminder that with all of the good things that are happening from a business and development standpoint in Detroit, this is a very large city. And so we just have to keep taking those barriers down and enabling the people that are in these communities to live a normal life and help them. So that's what we did, and we'll continue doing it. And it's a long journey, and it will be hard, but it can be done.
Right. So I agree with you. We have to figure out how we get our hands dirty and do the direct work, but we're going to also have to take it up a level, and we have to fix the systemic problems. And so this year you committed, you came alongside 35 other community and business leaders to work on improving the scope of schools in the city of Detroit. GM is a global company. You don't have to lean in the way that you've leaned in. Can you talk about why you leaned in? What did you learn? What was the most surprising thing you learned? And then maybe what do you think is the most obvious fix?
I think on these difficult problems, number one, there's never one fix, and you know that. You lead that every day. And so there isn't one silver bullet on things like this. But I think and this was one of the most eye-opening, hardest things, over the last 6 months that I've been involved with, because not only can you see the neighborhood in the school system, but you can see the people who have tried so hard to fix it as well. And it is eye-opening, but it's also eye-opening on how everybody really only is there to fix it. And I believe that if we are really going to compete in any business in Detroit, if we don't have a school system that produces the very best, and I mean both in the academic education, but also learning what it means to succeed, to be on time, to manage a checkbook, to make money, to manage money, and to produce and contribute that part of learning, then this city will be very fragile in its recovery. And I think that coalition and that group of people are very committed to do that. And that was probably one of the best things coming out of that. And I think the opportunity on that and the biggest thing that we can work on is the control piece of who puts schools where in this city. And if you look at the footprint of our school system here, and we had all the data, Tanya and the Skillman Foundation did a wonderful job of organizing and providing the data, which is really, it sounds simple, but it is not. It is very hard to get that data on a transparent basis. If you look at charter schools, EAA, and you look at DPS, EAA is part of DPS, all of those things come out and you get to see what really happened. But if we don't change who grants permission to put schools in what place, we will dilute the quality of education very quickly, because they'll compete for funds, they'll compete for services, they'll compete for all that. And I got to tell you, our kids deserve much more than that. And so that education authority that was suggested by the coalition is the most vital thing to get in place on a reform basis to start providing that education in the community, in the right place, with the right quality, with transportation, with food, with all of that. So I think that was one of the biggest things we learned.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really interesting about education in Detroit is that people think that there isn't good things going on in the city,
right,
that there aren't great educators, that there aren't great models. And actually, that's quite the opposite. We have really committed and dedicated educators in these buildings. We have great models, but the soil is bad. So I always say you can't plant good seed on bad soil.
That's right.
And so this recommendation around the commission is really about fixing the soil so that we can start to get this supply and demand corrected based on demographics, but also get it corrected based on quality. One of the other recommendations is about Detroit Public Schools. And so, you know, Detroit Public Schools is a hard issue to deal with. For many of you who don't know, Detroit Public Schools is running a deficit of about $100 million a year. And it is very much related to some significant structural problems and also the demographic changes in our city. And what they have said to us is that their finances are far worse than the city's, but the city was able to declare bankruptcy, and because the Detroit Public School System is an agent of the state, it can't apply for a bankruptcy.
Right.
So they actually are pulling from a lesson from GM. And GM's transition from an old code to a new code. Can you talk a little bit about the pros and cons of that type of solution for Detroit Public Schools?
Sure. First of all, by the way, you hit on something that the other impressive thing I learned from that experience was the quality and the dedication and the passion of the teachers. There were some incredible people in that coalition, teacher-wise, that I just had a different outlook on that, so it was very impressive. But the bankruptcy piece of this is important because I'm one of the people that is left from before bankruptcy and post-bankruptcy, Mary Barra and myself and a few others, but that is a very tough equation either way. But the capacity and demand piece of that is very analogous to the capacity and demand situation that goes on in the Detroit Public Schools. And so you've got capacity. In fact, you've got overcapacity on the educational, either structural cost piece of it or the actual operations of those structural cost facilities. And so unless that gets changed to better match with the demand of what the actual student body is, you're going to carry that structural cost. That structural cost is either going to be manifested in debt, which it is, as you mentioned, from about, $1,200 per student is spent to service the debt in DPS. Very analogous to what General Motors was, even though we couldn't get the debt and we couldn't fix the footprint fast enough as the economy declined and the demand declined. We're servicing this, but we're kicking it down the road. And so until we get and quit kicking that down the road, either from a servicing of the debt and repayment of the debt to relieve that, or from a total restructuring of where we have the schools and how many schools we have from a demand standpoint with the students, we're going to keep kicking it down the road. And if you keep kicking it down the road, the soil never changes that you're planting on the new seeds of education. So that has to happen. And it's hard, and it's tough, and it can be political in this case. But unless that's really dealt with, we keep kicking it down the road. And the school system will not really fundamentally change until we really address that.
Right. So we've talked a little bit about the soil. So let's talk about the seed. So one of the things that I think is really interesting is that in Detroit, we think so much about the things that are broken. And we're so busy trying to fix the things that are broken that we spend very little time thinking about the future. Which is, I think, really interesting because we are rooted to the automobile industry. We're an auto town, and you are always thinking about the future. I mean, so you're thinking about the auto industry moving from being the automobile industry to mobility industry. You just announced that the Warren GM Tech Center is going to have an autonomous car. It's going to be an autonomous car campus. So these are major innovations in our world. What do we need to be doing as a city, thinking about how we connect and align what the auto industry is doing, the way that you're declaring the future? What does that mean for our education system, and maybe even what does it mean for our city?
That's a great question, because I spent the last 2 days doing investor conferences around the future, and you probably saw some of those announcements you made. You know, we're going to make a fuel cell for the military, and the fuel cell is going to be a reconnaissance vehicle. We're going to do an autonomous campus in Warren as part of the $1 billion reinvestment in Warren. We're going to do a car share program here with Stonehenge and Icon in New York. There's a lot of these things. We're going to do an e-mobility bike, very unautomotive. If you think about the skill sets that are needed to do what we're going to do, I would like to not have to announce that we're going to have to go get software and electrical engineers from a different city than Detroit. Unfortunately, we are not preparing our students for that type of different transportation model and mobility model. We don't have that talent pool in Detroit. And so to really eliminate the cycles now and in the future of a city that is tied to automotive or transportation or mobility, we have to have those skill sets in place. And that comes from right now deciding that we're going to change the pre-K to 12 experience. And we don't want to have people go to a great school in Detroit, go to college, and leave Detroit. That can't go on. We want them to really want to be in Detroit and really take on places like Silicon Valley, take on places around the world that are a less mature automobile market today that are looking for mobility solutions in the future. We want that skill set to be here. Then we want to cultivate it, we want to grow it, and we want to have a place where people want to live to do it.
Yeah. I love this quote that talent is distributed equally, but opportunity is not. And I find that to be especially true because when we think about Detroit and you go any place in this country, wherever you go and you're finding a good idea, a good project, someone leading the nation, leading the world, you always find a Detroit native there in the midst. So we have the talent and we're exporting it, but we are not necessarily preparing the talent right now that we need to move our city forward and be an attractive place for them. What would you say, quickly, because I think we only have 1 minute left, what would you say to the expats in the audience that they could do to help us fix and solve this problem? How can they contribute?
Well, I think the business piece of this obviously is huge, and I don't mean my business, but I mean all business, so that's huge. But I would also say that when you go back to wherever you're traveling in from, that you talk about what's happening here and what the possibilities are and what the talent needs really are. And, you know, I use this when I recruit. This isn't for everybody. It's for the people who want to be part of a massive change, of a city that is on the rise, and the opportunities can be limitless. If you want to be part of that and willing to work to do that, that's very exciting. And it's very exciting to the right kind of person. If you don't want to do that, that's okay. But those people, when you go back to talk about this in your hometown or your place or business, that's the kind of people we want here. That's what will change it. We want those people that we want part of an exciting change here, part of a new transportation business, part of a new set of business and retail in the city, and part of a great education system that fuels it. And that's the vision.
Well, thank you. So will you join me in thanking Mark? Because I think one of the things that's amazing about us as a community is that we have leaders like you, Mark, that will lean in a big way, who are going to take these problems, we're going to solve them. We got a collective memory of success as a community. We did the GM bankruptcy. We did the city bankruptcy. Now all we got to do is K-12. This is nothing, right? We got this. And if you want to be a part of it with us, if you want to put your name in history of making these changes, we will take your name, your money, your energy, whatever you want to contribute.
That's
right,
right, Tanya.
All right.
This is a great leader for our city right here.
Thank you.
Great leader. Thank you. Great job.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Casey Crane.